Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Kevin White, Deputy AD at Clemson University. My thoughts on leadership. We help establish the vision of the organization. As a leader, we try to embed a sense of purpose into the heart and soul of each employee, inspiring them to internalize their purpose and their role and responsibility to our organization. I strive to empower people to walk with me together as a team instead of behind me. Being a part of the NCAA Leadership Institute allowed me to understand who I was as a leader and also to further develop my skills at bringing people together to accomplish a shared set of goals. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive leadership in college athletics. Our guest today is Chris McFarlane. Chris is the Deputy Athletics Director for External Relations and Business Development at Central Florida. Greetings, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you having me, man. Respect all the work you do. Good to be a part of it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You've been there for over 3.5 years, been in the industry for almost 20 years with stops at Pitt, Northwestern, Mount St. Mary's, Loyola University in Baltimore, and most of your career is in fundraising. What I found interesting looking at your bio, Mount St. Mary's and Loyola University, it described you as leading the development office. And thinking about how far that had to be, you had to be pretty young leading the development office. Talk about that part of your career a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So my career is a little backwards. That's the reality of it. I learned that I was interested in development during an internship right after grad school. I went to Colgate University, had an opportunity to work with, Vicky Chun, now the AD at Yale, Shondell Reed, who's over at Air Force now. So some great folks. And development fundraising was an area that I just liked. I was doing a little bit of everything. And so when I left there, I started looking for jobs in fundraising throughout the country. Kind of applying online, never works out usually, but got an interview at Loyola, Maryland. Obviously things progressed and I had an opportunity to go be the number 2 person in fundraising at the time for Loyola. And I think I was maybe 2 months in, and the woman that hired me, my direct boss, decided that, she wanted to make a move, start a family, and the athletics hours just wasn't, super conducive to that. And so she made the move across campus, and we went a few weeks, no interviews, nobody really saying too much. And then they came to me and said, seems like you know what you're doing. Why don't you just run it?
Oh,
and
wow.
So I said, of course. Yeah, I know what I'm doing.
How old were you at that time?
I was 26 at the time.
26. Man. Okay, so now it's your shot.
My first real job in fundraising. I dabbled in it, but never led it. But if it looks to you like I know what I'm doing, then we'll rock with it and see what we can figure out. But I would say, looking back on it, that was the best thing to happen for my career, because It threw me into the fire. It forced me to get better. It forced me to steal ideas from other places that I thought might work for us. And I spent, 3.5 years there, and we were successful.
What were your challenges at that time, if you can think back at 26, 27?
I think they had spent upwards of 10 years trying to figure out how to build a lacrosse stadium at Loyola. Obviously, lacrosse is huge in that state, and they were already a factor, but they wanted to be a major player and didn't really have the space to do so. So I ended up helping lead those efforts, obviously with some help from, senior level administrators, and we were able to make it happen. And I think one full year after I left, they won the title.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is pretty cool to see, even though I wasn't still there for that. I thought, it kind of puts all in perspective the work that you put in and the people that you were able to do it with. And so,
but let me follow up that question. What were the challenges you faced as a as a young person in this leadership role, taking on the responsibilities you took on?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was not knowing what I didn't know,
Okay.
not knowing half of what to do in development. Frankly, I had matter of fact, I didn't even have one NACTA under my belt. So, so it was not having a network to really call upon to figure some of those things out initially.
Which is interesting.
I had mentors, but not necessarily focused on development or experts in that area. And so it was a lot of checking other people's websites, following other people's initiatives. All right, that won't work here, but this one might. If I can tweak that and maybe do this, we could have some success there. And
Wow.
and we were fortunate that it worked out. I would tell you, it impacted my next job because, I left Loyola ultimately to go to Mount St. Mary's. And, if you're familiar with that region and those schools, that wasn't necessarily a bigger, better job. But I think for me, it was a kind of a understanding, hey, do I really know what I'm doing? We were successful at Loyola, but was it just right place, right time? And, I wanted to go somewhere else and build it. And, having 3 years of experience, I wasn't going to get a Power 5 job to try to build it. So that was an opportunity. It was a bigger job, more board of trustee involvement and engagement, that kind of thing.
What was the charge when they hired you? What were you brought in to actually build something? Like, what did they charge you with doing?
The president of Mount St. Mary's actually called me directly. And so at the time I was 29 and I had a university president calling me directly, which meant something to me at that time. And so he said, look, we've seen what you've been able to do at Loyola, which was a rival school. We are trying to start that sort of program, and we've seen what you've been able to do, and I would love to talk to you about doing it here.
Wow. Okay.
It's a 45 minutes separate the two schools, give or take. And, I said, I guess there's no harm in talking. And I was also going through what would have been my third transition in terms of my supervisor on the university foundation side at Loyola. Wow. And then an AD change at the same time, with Joe Boylan leaving, Jim Paquette coming in. And so there's a lot of transition. And again, I'm younger in my career. Now I'm up to 4 or 5 different bosses in 3 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
So I was open to having a conversation. And, ironically, I think the interview maybe lasted 7 questions. And he kind of abruptly ended it and was like, look, John, who was the VP for the foundation at Mount St. Mary's, he's like, John might be upset with me, but because we haven't talked about this, but you're the guy I want. And John is going to have an offer on your desk tomorrow morning. And
That's
John
crazy.
is sitting there, so we're just kind of staring at each other. But but to his credit, he did have an offer in my inbox by the time I got to work the next morning. And I actually said no
really?
multiple times. And then again, I'm young at the time and might have been a little, still a little cocky, but the president ultimately said, look, I can't raise the salary anymore, but I will put a bonus structure in place out of my own budget. And if you come here and you kill it, we'll give you X amount. If you do something that, we weren't even projecting that you could do, we'll give you a second tier. And if you just do something crazy, then you'll get a third tier. And honestly, I knew that he did that with full expectation that he was not paying a bonus that year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say my first year, as much as I would love to...
Before you continue, you said no. Was it because of the salary? Is that why he came back? I mean,
no,
what made him?
I think it was part of it. It was...
Something he understood there to be salary was why he sweetened the offer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean...
Something. Yeah.
It wasn't enough to to make a transition. If we're gonna stay at the same salary, then I can just stay where I'm at.
Yeah, 45 minutes away, everything.
And maybe move later in the summer, maybe move next year, maybe move however many years down the road. But this maybe is not the opportunity.
Yeah, I got it. Yep.
And so I took that personal when he put the bonus structure in, frankly. And as much as I would love to sit here and say it was all about, providing for the student athletes, in reality, it wasn't. That first year was about, I'm going to prove them wrong and I'm going to get my money.
I don't think I'm going to hit this. Yep. And so what happened?
With 5 weeks left in the semester, we hit the third tier. So I didn't say a word at the first tier or the second tier. And we hit it. And, I would never advise anybody to do this, but I sent him an email with the data that came from the university. And I just forwarded that and said, hey, is the bonus going to be in this paycheck or the next paycheck? And again, I would never ever advise anybody to do that. But I still haven't gotten a response to that email however many years later. But we met after the year was over. He congratulated me and praised me for the work that we had done. But it kind of solidified for me that maybe I do kind of sort of know what I'm doing. And I can do it at a bigger stage whenever that time comes. It wasn't in a rush. That's one of the things that I've kind of been grounded in terms of my career. I'm never in a rush. I do want to be an AD one day, but I want to be a good AD. It's got to be the right fit and all that. So I have to be an AD by this age, or I have to be I don't really have that feeling.
Doesn't really matter. Did you have a team at the time at one of those stops, or was it just you?
We had one person at each.
Oh, really? Wow, interesting. So and they reported to you?
They did. Yep.
Okay, so this first full-time job ends up being a fundraising job, and you have a leadership role because now you're leading somebody, right? So you got a team, you got to create this little culture of we're fundraisers and we're going to do this at a high level. So then you get to Mount St. Mary's, and this was a different person from Loyola.
Yes.
The person that reported to you then?
Yes.
Yeah, all that is super interesting, especially for being young in the industry. Coming in, there are other people who start off in development, but leading your own shop is significant. And then the president, how do you know? Let me ask this as a psychology question. We tend to sometimes create our own narratives and react to those narratives. How do you know the president didn't expect you to hit those things? Or was that a narrative you may or may not have created on your own to challenge yourself to, you know what I mean?
I don't recall specifically the conversations, but I just maybe he expected the first level, or he hoped for the first level, because then we all win,
Yeah.
I just don't think he anticipated having to pay that out.
Water.
I just don't.
That's just hilarious. So then you make the jump to Northwestern, right? Northwestern was next.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a development position.
Correct.
And are you working specifically for the annual fund, or what type of position are you in there at Northwestern?
Yeah, so Northwestern came about from Tim McMurray, who's at Commerce. And I really knew Tim more through NACTAs, my first few years. And I'd kind of gotten a reputation for being the guy in a suit at NACTA when everybody's wearing polos and whatever. So he was one of the guys that kind of made an effort to get to know me a little bit.
Yeah,
and he reached out and said, hey, I don't know if you're looking for a job, and frankly, I can't help you get this one, but Northwestern is getting ready to really ramp up their fundraising operation. Jim Phillips is amazing. They just hired Travis Goff from Tulane. I don't know if you know him. I didn't. But it might be something you want to look into, just some of the things that you've been able to do with no resources and, no staff. I just think you'd be really good. And so I looked into it. I ended up connecting with Travis on LinkedIn, and we set up a call. We talked for maybe an hour. He mentioned nothing about a job. But we set up another call. We talked for another hour, and he didn't mention anything about a job then either.
Yeah.
And then on the third call, he finally asked me to interview for what was ultimately going to be the associate AD for major gifts position.
Okay.
And so I'm in the Northeast Conference. I'm at Mount St. Mary's. You asked me an interview for an associate AD job in the Big Ten. Yeah, yes, I will do that. In an awesome city, great AD, all that. And so I went through the process, ultimately finished second to Fred Smith during that search. And Fred and I are still very close friends. And so I just kind of went back to Mount St. Mary's and said, we'll just keep grinding here, and another opportunity will come whenever it comes. And so Northwestern came back and wanted me to come in that next position underneath. And at first it was, that's significant money less. I'm not on the senior team. I had all these kind of reasons. But then ultimately I think the reality is I checked my own ego and said, look, what I said I wanted in my next role was, first and foremost, it was actually to not lead. I didn't want to be in charge because I had just gone 7 years, essentially the first 7 years of my career being in charge. And so I said, if I take one more job, now I'm at 10 years, I'm probably never going to accept a job that I'm not leading. And so for me, it was an important opportunity and time to, I don't necessarily view it as a step back because I was moving up significantly in level.
Yeah, 100%.
But learn from somebody else, learn from hopefully someone else. And to understand, just to fine tune what I was doing, to understand what I didn't know. I wanted a good city. I wanted good academics. I wanted big time athletics. And so when I looked at the list of what I said I wanted, Northwestern checked all those boxes. It just wasn't the job that I went for. Yeah. And it was the first time I had interviewed in person and not gotten a job.
Okay.
And so, ultimately I agreed to go, and kind of credit to Fred, who understood, we were both in that search.
Yeah.
And I guess when I got to Northwestern, he was tremendously good about understanding that dynamic, and then just let's rock together. And he still led me in all that, and I respected that leadership and authority. And then, Travis was awesome, and we did amazing things at Northwestern together.
Yeah. So what's interesting, there's a few interesting things about this story that we're unveiling here, revealing. The first thing is you really had to check the ego on a number of different accounts. And to do that early on in your career takes a lot. And it's actually good for you because you realize there are some things I still need to learn. And so maybe this will help me learn some things. Mm-hmm. First. And the second thing is, I was wondering, you think about Mount St. Mary's and Loyola, like, where was the mentorship? If you're in this leadership role, like, who are you looking to for direction? And am I making a good decision here? Did you get that in those early years, or was Northwestern the first time you had people in position that you felt like, what did you look up to and you could get mentorship?
I would say at Colgate, Loyola, and the Mount, I was super fortunate to have really great people. They weren't necessarily going to be able to teach me or lead me in development, but they were quality individuals and quality people that I could lean on for just professional advice or guidance.
Yep.
I had mentors either from college, being a student. I had former coaches. I was a basketball student athlete. Mm-hmm. So I could kind of pick and choose. I'm the first person in my family to even graduate from college. So I couldn't go to the family as much. And, as I sit here today, I don't know that my mom and dad fully understand what I do for a living. Mm-hmm. Super that supportive, happens. But if you ask them to articulate it, I don't know what that story would sound like.
Which is interesting.
But no, really good people that I think helped lean into me in their own ways. Again, it wasn't development specific, but.
So like you mentioned, Northwestern, you want to go and not be in the lead. So you get
Mhm.
there and you actually have people who have fundraising experience that can expose you to other things. That probably was an asset, a very valuable asset to you as you moved on through your career.
Yeah, one of the things that I think, um, and I tell people this now, I would say I was prepared for Northwestern more than I thought I was because of the work and the experience and even Colgate, Loyola, and Mount St. Mary's. Um, because I was having to do it all. I was having to learn how to really grind and work, build genuine relationships, how to raise money when uh, the nation doesn't truly care about or know, did Loyola Maryland win in men's
Yeah.
basketball yesterday?
Right. Yeah.
That alumni base cares. Those parents care, but it's not necessarily national news. So you have to work to, you don't have a ton of people just calling you to support. You don't have, you don't have a football program, much less a sold out stadium of
Yeah.
75, 100,000, and they're wanting their prime seat. So you have to
Right.
work. You have to figure out how to do it. And walking into Northwestern, I think, Travis was really, really specific about the type of team he put together. And so, Travis was coming from Tulane. I was coming from Mount St. Mary's. Fred was coming from Santa Clara. And Daniel Solo was coming from Hofstra. And so that was kind of the leadership core of that team at Northwestern. And we all had been at lower level Division I institutions running our own office. And so
Okay.
we brought that team together, and we had to learn Northwestern. We had to learn, Evanston, Chicago, and navigating a pro market for the most part. But I mean, we did things that alums told us to our face we wouldn't be able to do there. So,
Which is crazy. You get to Pitt. We'll talk on Pitt just briefly. You get to work for a woman who comes from fundraising, right? But she was also an athletic director before she got there. Tell me a little bit about that experience at Pitt. All right, sum that
yeah,
up for us.
Pitt was an opportunity. I think I just knew that I was ready to lead again.
Yeah.
I spent essentially 5 years almost to the day at Northwestern, and through the guidance of not only Jim Phillips and Travis, but I think my peers and frankly people that may not have been as high as I was in the pecking order from a title standpoint, all contributed to making me a better professional, not just development officer, but just a better professional.
Yeah.
So I felt ready at that point, and Pitt was an opportunity. I've been strategic in the stops that I've made, not necessarily this place or that
Mhm.
place, but I've worked across, I think, 6 different institutions. I think because of conference realignment, 7 different conferences.
Wow.
Um, but small privates, big privates, a large public. So I wanted to round out my resume in that sense. And that was one of the things that I talked to Jim and Travis about that Pitt would provide. It's, a large private institution. And if I
Mhm.
can replicate some success there, then once I am ready to become an AD, regardless of that place or position, I've probably done
Yeah. All the
something
things. Yeah.
that fits. It was good. It was a place that I frankly intended to spend more than the 2.5 years that I spent there. Um, and obviously Heather, comes with really solid Big Ten experience. She had been an AD at Eastern Michigan prior to coming to Pitt, so she had been an AD before. ACC, which I went to Florida State undergrad, so I'm an ACC guy. I enjoy the
Yeah.
ACC, and it was. I think when I walked into Pitt, it was maybe from a fundraising standpoint further behind than I expected. And if you think back, so I went there in 18, and in 13, that's when that transition happened from the Big East to the ACC. But it
Okay.
felt like there wasn't really a full plan behind that move. It was like ACC call, we have to go,
We got to do it.
which is the right decision, but it didn't come with the resources to fully back that move. But again, tremendous people. I had an opportunity to hire, I think, 10 people in the first
Oh, wow.
year and a half to rebuild that team. And
that was your charge. Your charge was to create the development, just apparatus.
Correct. To really build the infrastructure. So throughout my career, every stop in fundraising, I've worked across both the university foundation and athletic department.
Yes, sir.
So kind of joint roles. It's frankly the only thing I knew in fundraising. And so it allowed me an opportunity to kind of really serve in a leadership capacity in both units. And then obviously, it's my role and responsibilities maybe expanded beyond that. When you think about some of the things that occurred, whether it's, the George Floyd situation, COVID, there were a number of different things from a leadership standpoint that you just kind of lead.
I think that's very interesting. So we're coming to now, but I have a question before we get to your current position. You hired a team, you said roughly 10 people, and you're charged with building this apparatus. I wonder, have you had an opportunity to develop and articulate your leadership philosophy, right? Not coming into the role you're into now. And what would you say it is, if you could sum it up?
Yeah, I think just overall trying to be, to not to be too cliche, but like an organizational architect. So trying to develop a vision, creating alignment. So I don't believe in like, hey, this is how I lead, so you guys get on board. I think that's more my responsibility. Yeah, I'm going to have some core principles and philosophies, but for the most part, I want to be equitable in my leadership, but not necessarily equal, because that's not, I don't want to have a cookie cutter approach. What Chris may need, it may not be what Tai needs in terms of a leader. So just being there for what a person on my staff needs, character, competency, and, can you do the job? Are you a good person? And then are you going to do it the right way? A lot of people can do it if we let them cut corners and not follow this rule or this law, but can you do it in the manner that we want to do it, where we can celebrate our successes without understanding that something might be coming around the corner to diminish it. So, as I've gotten maybe probably starting at Northwestern, I think my mindset in that has changed in terms of maybe seeking out mentors less and doing more to try to bring others up with me. So
yeah, it's interesting, right? And when we're young, we're seeking relevance, and as we get older, we're seeking influence. We're seeking to influence.
Yep.
So at UCF, your title is Deputy Athletics Director, External Relations and Business Development. What I understand is that it's not necessarily the role you were brought in to do, but when the athletics director changed, they changed structure of things.
Sure.
And it looks like, based on the conversation we had before we started recording, this role was catered specifically for you based on your background and relationships you have there in the city of Orlando. Talk to me a little bit about what business development and external relations means with Chris McFarlane in that role.
Yeah, I would say it was, I guess, a combination of tailored to my skill set. And I did grow up in Orlando. I went to UCF for grad school. So I guess capitalizing on some of those things, but also fulfilling some holes or gaps or opportunities in the department. And so for us, I get to work with the majority of our external units to really help them thrive and reach their full potential, whatever that means, whatever that looks like day to day, that's different. Business development is something that we hadn't done as a department in any formalized way in our history. And, we're still a young university, but it was an opportunity for me to utilize my relationship building skill set, my revenue generation abilities to go out in the community, whether that be individuals or corporate entities, and build kind of allies and friends, whether they turn into donors, whether they turn into corporate partners, or kind of partners for our jobs program. So one of Terry's big initiatives that he takes a ton of pride in is the jobs program. So we guarantee 100% job or grad school placement for every student athlete that graduates from UCF. And so obviously to fulfill that mission, we need to have people that are willing to work with us and help our student athletes. And so I think my work from a business development standpoint ultimately funnels into one of those three pools. And so it's obviously two direct revenue sources, or one fulfilling our promise to a student athlete, or the conversation we had with mom or dad during the recruiting process, and just keeping ourselves accountable to that.
It sounds like the role is sort of a connector. So if you connect with somebody that may have an inkling of wanting to give money to the university or to athletics in some kind of way, so you connect them to the proper people. If there's a business that wants to connect to some of the things you're doing in athletics, or even on the school, you might connect them to the right people. And then, of course, like you mentioned, if their job, so basically chief connector kind of situation, which there's value in that because of the relationships, and the outcome of those relationships like last way beyond working at UCF, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, 100%. It's a place that I care about differently because it is my school. It's a city that I care about different. You know, I was gone for 16 years, but I'm back, and it still feels like home when I came back. And no, it's an opportunity. I've been fortunate to be a part of, really the best time at UCF. You know, I came here not expecting or not knowing anything about a potential Big 12 move. And so I accepted this job as a group of 5, American Athletic Conference, and we were going to go and it's probably, frankly, it was probably the one group of 5 job that I would have been interested in taking, and I wasn't seeking it. Danny White helped recruit me back home. But so this has just been kind of icing on top of that, because now we have a seat at the table, all the things that, UCF has been a disruptor for years, but now we have essentially an equal footing. We're still waiting for the full share from the league, but
all that.
But all the things that we heard in recruiting, even my first year or two, was, man, I love everything about you guys, but you're not Power 5, and for an 18-year-old, like, some of it's just like, I told my friends I was going Power 5. I can't go to UCF. It is
Crazy.
Everything I said I wanted, but you just didn't check that box, and that makes a difference. And so we've gone from just taking the local kid who went away big time. He or she had a decent career, but for whatever reason wanted to kind of come back home, whether that's playing time, whether it's just a fit, homesick, whatever that may be. So now we're at the table, competing for those recruits right out of high school.
Right there out the back. I have about 3 questions before we wrap, for 3 topics. The first question is, your career is based on understanding people. So there's an emotional intelligence involved, building relationships with people. So there's the understanding of how to build relationships, and then not being afraid to ask for whatever is needed. Tell me about the relationships part. Like, that seems like the most crucial area when you talk about development, or when you're talking about being a connector. Tell me about, how do you lean into that in terms of what you consider your superpower to be able to do that well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it's I don't think I fit your typical connector relationship guy.
Yeah,
I'm not an overly extroverted person, but I think one of the keys that I do think helps me is being genuine and actually caring about the conversation that we're having, but also listening. I think traditionally your quote unquote relationship guy is the loud kind of,
the car salesman kind of person.
Yeah. And that's not who I am in any way. I think, I think back to one of the in my mind, one of the biggest compliments that I've gotten in my career, and it was years ago, but I had a donor who told me, I would feel comfortable with you meeting one-on-one with my 90-year-old mother and asking her for money.
Wow. Okay.
And so that meant a lot to me because that's the approach that I would like to have. And it's, I guess it's not an approach. It's just the way that I go about it. And so I think it's, I've made my career unintentionally, but off being a builder. Every place I've been, we've built something. And I think carrying that over into the relationship piece, I don't try to be, the smartest guy in the room. I've had an opportunity to lead a number of different areas where I'm not even the subject matter expert, especially over the last, handful of years. But I don't try to be. I don't try to fake it like I am. I just lean into it. And one of the things I've been really good at is bringing people together, enhancing processes and procedures, helping connect dots, breaking down barriers, and being a problem solver. And so I think all those things kind of align with the way I go about building relationships.
Would you consider the work you're doing, I guess this position you're doing now, chief connector for the 3 major areas, this is you're building that too? Is this something you consider yourself building too?
No, absolutely. Because we've everything at UCF has had to elevate over the last few years. And so the Big 12 move is great, but we're not, our staff doesn't sit around every day like, hey, we're thrilled that we're in the Big 12. We can just sit back and relax. We're trying to compete every single day in every single sport that we have. And then, our men's soccer program's in the Sun Belt. So we want to win that too. And so I do think it absolutely fits the mold of a builder. We're navigating outside of our individual realm. So I've had conversations as recently as an hour ago about how we're going to continue to navigate rev share and the transfer portal and what NIL truly looks like in the next handful of months. And how do we become on the forefront and make some decisions here in the immediate future to navigate that and to put something in position that allows us to continue to be adaptable and agile enough to stay relevant and to stay, moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's important. I'll ask this last question. It's about the Convocation Corporation there at UCF, and I think you manage that. And correct me if I'm wrong, is this one of those type of blended business area that ties to college campus where you have businesses, you have housing, you have a bunch of different things, maybe even some type of athletic situation tied into that, and it helps out the community in general, but specifically ties to athletics?
Yeah, so the Convocation Corp, at least that's what we refer to it as. It's like a $20 million annual operation. Years well before I got here, it was essentially created to help fund the arena. And so, it incorporates the arena, the venue, which is our volleyball facility, 4 dorm towers, 3 parking garages, and then approximately 80,000 square feet in retail partner space. And so my role in it is to help manage the arena and venue from a revenue standpoint, and our third-party management group. So we utilize OVG 360 for our management. That team reports up through me here at UCF. Obviously, they have their own boss at OVG, but day to day, they function up through my leadership. And so that's everything from, the maintenance of the facility to what concerts and shows are going to funnel through Orlando. And the good piece is I also serve as a sport administrator for men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball. So I see all of the prongs that are coming through those spaces, and I can make decisions having the full scope of the picture.
Yeah, excellent.
I don't spend a ton of time, frankly, dealing with the housing piece. We let our friends over in housing kind of manage that. The garages, I really focus on one main garage that's tied to the arena. It sits kind of directly next to the arena, but right in the middle of the arena, the venue, and our baseball stadium. So that's the one that I care about more, because that's the one we utilize for the stuff that we're putting on there. And then from a corporate entity, while I don't spend a ton of time or maybe any time telling a franchise owner how to run their business, my role is really how it ultimately, big picture, impacts the revenue that either the university or UCF athletics are going to receive, and how we can maximize that and make it a win for both parties. And so not all the time is it a bottom line number to athletics. It may be a bottom line number to the Convocation Corporation, which is the separate DSO, or the university, but it's leveraging that work and hoping and trusting that at the end of the day, we're one university entity and we're all going to look out for each other. So my work in helping you will pay dividends somewhere else, when we need a favor here or a partnership in a different way. We're putting our work, to the table and saying, here's how we've helped and partnered. Can you help us back on this in this way?
Do you the creativity process in terms of, does this company you mentioned, they bring ideas to you about things in the arena outs that are not athletics related events?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever bring things to them? Like, is it one-sided? They bring it to you, sign off on it, or do people come to you like, hey, we want to do something at UCF, and you refer them back to that organization? Or tell me how that process works.
No, it absolutely works both ways. I would say they bring more to me, but I do try to we've had different discussions. Some have actually, manifested itself and been included. Some have not. We tried to put together like a boxing, a high level premier fight night here on campus. And I think all the parties wanted to do it, frankly, but we got too big for the arena, and we're going to move it to the stadium. And then the stadium, we've never hosted anything concert wise at our football stadium. So from a power standpoint, from a logistics standpoint, we just weren't fully confident in the execution of it. And so we kind of backed out of it. But no, I try to bring ideas because I try to pay attention to what other entities are doing. Or I see the type of shows that may be coming to Kia Center where the Orlando Magic play. And could we have had that one? We are 10,000 seat arena. So once you put a stage in, you're probably right around 8. What is our niche? If you're a 10 or 12,000 seat show, how can we get you to come down to almost guarantee a sellout, then go up and hope or play for a 2/3 capacity venue?
All right.
So I am involved in that stuff, and it's not a day to day, but it's a as they come, or as a relationship that I have, whether it be in Orlando or not, manifests itself with different opportunities. I just want to bring something that will either benefit our students or bring the right amount of revenue to help an entity here on campus.
Yeah. And is the philosophy similar when you talk about which franchise will be part of the commercial business space? If a company wants to come in, if there's an opening, and now you got to figure out who to put there, I guess, if that question makes sense. Yeah,
absolutely. And it allows me to partner with some of my colleagues on campus to really understand how they view it.
Oh, okay.
So I might have my own priorities or what I think benefits the athletics enterprise. Mm-hmm. And then they will have obviously their own thoughts of how this benefits the university. Ultimately, if we can get a company, an organization that is invested in UCF and what we are, and not just only looking to make money, and we can do it in a way that hopefully benefits multiple segments of our operation, and then I view it as a win. We want long-term partners. We don't typically have a ton of quick transitions in and out, but the next step for us is really branching out into the local community and how we get the local community to come come have lunch on campus, because we have these entities right here that may be 5 minutes from your office, but you don't know about it because we're kind of embedded in a college campus. And so that's the next step, but it's, my boss has been tasked with generating additional revenue and creating new benchmarks in that space. And so I'm doing my part to make sure that he's filling that bucket up to the president. But it's fun. It's, I came here ultimately, you mentioned my role being different maybe than what I accepted initially. And it is, but I think the main part of me coming to UCF was to do things that I hadn't done before and to really start to round out my resume doing a lot of different things. And that's still been the case. And so,
yeah, what's interesting as I sum this up here, or as we sum this up here, is while fundraising is the experience you have, the skill that you have developed is actually building, like you said, putting things together and crafting things. So that's what it looks like Terry saw was like, yeah, you're a fundraiser, but let's use this skill here, which
Correct.
has been the underlying skill for the whole time, which sounds to me makes you a great fit there at UCF in terms of this part of your career. And I'm sure they're happy to have you, Chris. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
I appreciate the time, man. It was a pleasure.
Yes, sir. That was Chris McFarlane. He's the Deputy Athletics Director for External Relations and Business Development at Central Florida. And of course, I am Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.